Follow the Path. The Bears Grove is adult-level discussion of role-playing as a storytelling art at samchuppmedia.com. Good morning and welcome to another Bears Grove podcast. I am so sorry it has taken a while to get the podcast engine, as it were, up and running again. And I did miss having some podcasts come out on a regular basis. There are a few in the can, as they call it. So they're going to be coming out over the next couple of days, including the long-awaited and much mourned last of the city's podcast. It is a short episode, which makes up for a lot of long episodes. I feel like that does. Anyway, so today on the program, I'd like to talk about how to make a sense of increasing levels of technology in your game, in your fantasy game, without going over the top. And one of the things that has caused me to think about this lately is the Artificer character class, and the fact that there's a lot of games out there that are making room for slightly more than medieval weaponry. And I think it's a good idea to look at. There are some caveats. So to start out with, let's talk about, we don't need to talk about the obvious one just yet, the weapons. We'll go into that in a little while. But I want to talk about an engine. Okay. The concept of physical work power. Back in the Enlightenment period of Europe, there was a time when people started to realize that things like steam and other kinds of technology can be utilized to do work instead of people or horses or dogs or whatever. And it's really a significant change, because the idea of doing work, of having power in your hands to do with what you will, was at the time something akin to magic. It was to the point where people made fun of the idea because they thought it would never happen. I read the wonderful but really long-winded and very requiring a lot of attention series by Neil Stephenson called The Baroque Cycle. Great stories. I love them all, but man, you have to be in it for the long haul. Luckily, I like to drive and I like to listen to audiobooks, and so it was never a problem to get into the entire Baroque Cycle. I've listened to it 3 times, something like that. It's just, what can be said? I'm a geek. Anyway, but a lot of people get a hold of that series and they go, wow, it's just too much. And when you think about the fact that it was written by hand on a parchment, on a actual piece of paper, it's kind of like, wow, yeah, I can see why. That digression over with. In reading it, there was a section that was just discussing Mr. Newcomen's engine for raising water by fire. And if that doesn't sound like magic to me, to you, it might not. It just sounds like a magical event. The engine for raising water by fire. But what that was a pump designed to run off of steam to pump out the water in mines in, I think it was 10 mines in Cornwall, but don't quote me on that. Mines that had been flooded and become useless. They had methods of then getting the water out and maybe going down there and mining some more. So think about that first, because it is a very powerful idea. Once you have an engine, you have a lot of possibilities. Not just transportation, which is the obvious one, but also construction, the concept of war machines, and so on. And now we're going right back into weaponry. So let's just go ahead and go there, since the theme stream seems to be heading that way. So weaponry. One thing that a lot of scholars point to is, okay, when we went from a non-gunpowder world to a gunpowder world, a lot of things changed. One of those things is that, the ability to wield weapons, like melee weapons, became a little bit less effective. They became quite a bit less effective from a distance. Yeah, they had bows and arrows, and yeah, in a D&D universe, bows and arrows are like pretty deadly, and they're pretty deadly in the real world too. But excuse me. But really, what we're talking about here is the advent of gunpowder, and when people who are not part of a feudal nobility get a hold of gunpowder, they really start to think in terms of, what can we do with this power that we have? It takes a little while. But it's really difficult to say, to ask yourself, why didn't they, if indeed they have gunpowder and they have guns, why didn't they just seize the day, as it were? And to a certain extent, I refer back to the Baroque cycle, because it became clear in the Baroque cycle that the manufacture of gunpowder was what becomes the new power source. Political power, and of course the nobility realize, hey, these blokes with guns could kill us. Even like a badly raised peasant could shoot us if we don't watch it. So you have to take these things into account when you're adding this level of technology to your game. Now, the way that some games address this problem is that they make the technology dependent on some kind of magic. And I've tried to do that myself in my games, because I feel like if somebody has a magical, if there's a bunch of wizards out there that have magic that can cause small things to happen, like the exploding, like basically the same equivalent of like burning hands. That's instantaneous combustion. It is going to, it serves the purpose of the same kind of thing that gunpowder does. So why can't we create a smaller version of that effect and enclose it into a, gun barrel, and use that as a gun, a magical firearm. Magical firearms would then be, it would have the similar problems to any other magic item, in the sense that, you know, let's say that you have a wizard on hand and they see you drawing your pistol. If they know the magic that's involved with making that pistol, they can counterspell that pistol, which would then, you know, render that gun completely useless. That's what making magic dependent technology does for you, is it allows you to still keep things within the realm of magic. If at the point in which you have gunpowder, though, once people learn about gunpowder and they learn how to make it, it's not terribly problematic to make more. And so you don't even need an alchemist, really. I mean, you kind of do. You have to know how to get saltpeter and a couple of other things put together. But there are, you know, as we saw on that show, on that Star Trek The Original Series show, where Kirk put together effectively a cannon because he happened to notice all the aspects of gunpowder in his environment, sulfur and, you know, so forth. He was able to put together a makeshift cannon, if you will, and defeat the Gorn. So, the point which you have gunpowder that works, you are going to have to just sort of put that in and drop it like a rock in your pond. Have everybody suddenly realize about this stuff at the same time. There's going to be some brutal battles that take place where people show up with a knife to a gunfight, but then eventually everybody's going to realize what this is, and there's a couple of things that you can do. In a magic world, I would ask my wizard to go ahead and research spells that stop combustion from happening. Because all guns run on some kind of combustion, unless you have some kind of like air gun, air spirit or something. So all guns run on combustion. So I'm asking my wizards to come up with anti-combustion fields. I'm asking them to come up with inertial, like effectively the same thing that they have in Dune, the force fields that detect fast-moving objects and stop them. And I'm asking my wizards to up their level of gunpowder detection spells. You know, what I really want to do is find out if there are any guns in the party. You know, if there are any guns in my palace. You know, I want to know. And because gunpowder is very specific, some kind of magic spell should be able to pick up on it, right? In addition to that, I'm going to use my feudal powers to enact laws saying the manufacture of gunpowder is strictly in the province of the government. Nobody else can do it. If you're found with gunpowder, it's the same thing as having a gun. If it's discovered that you made gunpowder to give to somebody, you're going to be tried for treason. You know, basically put my foot down and say, none of you peasants better be making gunpowder. That is not going to stop them, by the way, but it'll make a thing that happens. It'll drive up the price of black market gunpowder, and it will also make it so that people will want to keep it hidden and not drag it out at every combat, because of the possibilities of getting arrested. So that's that. And one thing that I, as a game designer, want to put out there, and that is, and this might be considered dirty pool, but I personally feel as though early gunpowder should be cantankerous, just like it really was, and that early guns should be one of those things where the experience is very, in terms of quality, your gun going off is very, I mean, it's just the first step. And whether you hit somebody or not is wildly variable. Whether your gun goes off at all is wildly variable. Or whether it goes off a few minutes later when you're not wanting to go off. All those things can be added in, I feel, with no cries of foul play, since that was our personal experience in this reality, right? And so don't hesitate to make it a difficult proposition. And it gets to the point where, until there is a lot of upgrades in the area of gunsmithing and the area of gunpowder, we're looking at something that's less reliable than a magic missile wand, really. So if you look at a magic missile wand, and you say, this one costs 5,000 gold, and this other thing over here costs roughly the same, and yet I might be arrested for having it. I'm going to go with the wand. It seems a lot easier to deal with the wand, and I don't have to worry about the wand exploding in my hands. As a side note, I just thought it might be interesting at some point to investigate the concept of, what if we made all magic like that? Like, what if we made magic into something that was literally incredibly difficult and highly chaotic all the time? And so, you know, that it would introduce that kind of inconsistency, which would make people go, oh, maybe I shouldn't want to use this. But that's a separate thing. Probably a good topic for an other worlds, other realities kind of podcast. But today, we're talking about the technology, raising the technology level a little bit. Finally, there's also electricity. And electricity is one of those things that shouldn't be that incredibly hard to do. It's something that even regular folks create with their hands, the static electricity. So, create with their bodies by rubbing against a carpet or whatever. So it's not that far to consider, what if we did a situation where people discover electricity and learn how to store it and that sort of thing. And I believe that that's already happened in like Eberron, and I think a lot of these slightly higher technology ideas come from that Eberron concept. But I couldn't do a show about technology without talking a little bit about electricity. And it may be something that you want to consider in terms of like, what are the implications? Because really the things you want to watch out for, if you don't want like massive jumps in electrical technology, you want to watch out for storage of electricity, batteries. You want to watch out for things like capacitors, which store electricity up to a point and then just give up all of it. You want to watch the concept of valves or vacuum tubes, because that's right there. You're going to get into if then, you know, Boolean style electrical usage. And once you get vacuum tubes, you're pretty much at the spot where Turing invented the computer. And I don't think that anybody will disagree with me that, you know, artificial intelligence in a fantasy game may be a little bit over the top. Although, you know, we have demons. So, I mean, half a dozen of one, six of the other, right? At any rate, I see that my time is over. Oh, by 5 minutes. Great. Well, I made up for my 7-minute one. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And when you go to sleep tonight, have sweet dreams when you get them.